Hi everybody, welcome to Esther's podcast. I'm joined today by recent member of the Esther Council. She's did a nice long-term serving for us. We're ever so grateful to her. But she's now busy being head of strings at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, founder and president of the English Viola Society, secretary of the International Viola Society, assistant artistic director of chamber music at Pro Corda, jury member of many international competitions, board member of the Lionel Tertis International Viola Festival, and also in her spare time, when she's not doing any of those things, she's also founded and directed a major outreach and education project called ARCO, which facilitates students at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire teaching students in Soweto in South Africa. Louise Lansdown, you are unbelievably busy lady. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me, Nicole.
So tell us, you were born in South Africa. When did you first discover the viola?
Well, that's a story. So yes, I was born in Cape Town in South Africa back in 1971. So I'm a grand 50 years old now, which is remarkable. And actually, I started to play the piano when I was probably 8 or 9. Actually, I hated it and gave up. I didn't like practicing, which I think is probably a story that many have experienced.
Quite human.
But then I missed it so much that I took it up again about a year later, and I was incredibly passionate about the piano. Actually, it was definitely my first instrument all the way through into university. So, but I did decide I wanted to play the cello. I'm sorry, violists out there, but I did decide that was the instrument for me. And I applied there was a really lovely music center down the road called the Beau Soleil Music Center. And I applied to study the cello, but of course there were no places. And I was told it's viola or nothing. And I was furious. And I remained furious actually for 5 years. I didn't want to play it. So this was when I was about 13. I thought it was a damn cheek that I'd not been able to play the cello. And then a year or two later, my sister applied to the same music center and she got to play the cello because there was a place, so that just put like extra salt in the wound there. But actually, so I played the viola, but I did play in some orchestras, and I started to do a bit of chamber music. But if I'm being really honest, it didn't feel like my thing, and I was pursuing life to be a pianist. So I went to go and study at the University of Cape Town with an amazing American pianist called Lamar Crowson, who was the pianist of the Milas ensemble, actually. And he was a Texan through and through and loved to wear his cowboy boots and cowboy hat and smoke a cigarette out of one side of his mouth and a pipe out of the other during the piano lesson. It was an experience. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. And anyway, as it got to the end of my second year of studying the piano at the University of Cape Town, I decided to go with my friends, either wisely or not wisely, to go and watch what was then the UNISA, University of South Africa International Piano Competition. And on the way back, I was involved in a major car accident. Luckily, or maybe unluckily, but I made it through it. But with several years of recuperation ahead of me. And I always say it was a very large bump on the head that made me decide that I was going to suck in the piano and take up the viola as my thing. So I suppose a really big change, something dramatic happened to me, and I kind of felt like I couldn't go back to being the old me, and I had to find a new me, and somehow that was the viola. So I just changed instruments. I dropped the piano. I still bash away at it quite horribly, but it's kind of incredibly useful because I was once okay at it. It's incredibly useful for teaching and for looking at scores. And yeah, it has a definite place in my life. I still love it. But then, yeah, from then onwards, there was not a minute of looking back, and it was the viola all the way. So that was now, I'm going to show my age now. That was 1992, the car accident. And then it was about 18 months later when I was able to go back to university. And yeah, so there you go. You asked the question.
I did. So that wasn't for physical reasons that you decided to completely change the viola. It was almost like a personality change.
I think, yeah,
A musical personality change?
Well, no, I think probably it was also another personality change. It was definitely, it was an all and everything change. Yeah. But I think in some ways maybe that was the making of me rather than the, you know, the unmaking. One can always look for the negative in everything, but if one looks why something happens, then I'm very grateful for that in some strange, warped way.
How fantastically positive. And then, so when did you come over to the UK?
So I was almost 26, 25 and almost 26. And I'd studied at a fantastic university in Stellenbosch, studied the viola, and I had a really, really wonderful teacher there. Actually, he was a violin teacher. I don't like to tell people that too much, but actually he was really a remarkable teacher. And it was kind of halfway through my master's degree in Stellenbosch that I got the ABRSM Overseas Scholarship to come and study actually at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester. So that was back in September 1998.
And who was your teacher in Stellenbosch?
It was a wonderful, wonderful man who has now passed away. His name was Jack de Vet, who has taught many South Africans. And also I studied with a viola player who has also now passed away, called Eric Rycroft.
So I, as a violinist, I teach viola as well. And, you know, I'll often get comments from students or parents saying, so you're not really a viola teacher then? And I say, well, yes, because I'm teaching a viola. But I do sometimes feel quite fraudulent about it, that perhaps I don't know the repertoire as well as I know the violin repertoire. But do you feel it's okay to be sort of, you know, crossing the divide, as it were?
I mean, in South Africa, I'd say that there is a limitation in some ways for real experts in the pedagogical sphere, in particular in the viola. And what I felt with Jack de Vet in particular as a violinist, and he actually, I mean, he didn't want to take me. He tried to get me to play the violin. And then he said, well, you're going to have to try it. I don't teach viola players. So I said, well, I don't want to play the violin. I hate the sound of it. You can't make me play it. He said, I can, you have to do it. So for 1 week, he made me play the violin, and I came back and he said, you sound like an elephant, Louise. It doesn't suit you. So I said, well, I did tell you that I didn't feel an affinity with it. Yeah. And once I made my mind up that I was going to do it, come hell or high water, it was somehow going to happen. Yeah, even though I think, yeah, I don't know why on earth he took me then, but he saw a sort of stubbornness in me, which probably he liked. And we had not a similar sense of humor, but we had a sense of humor that took us through the hard times. But he was a remarkable man, and actually probably the basis for everything, the way that I teach now and the way that I think, probably comes from the way he was able to negotiate and break down everything about playing. He was a remarkable pedagogue and mind. Actually, he linked everything to literature and art and natural movement, and which he was like poetry in motion. So I would say that the basis for all the fundamentals for everything about teaching, I definitely have from him, and lots of life lessons too.
Yeah, no, I know many famous South African musicians who have learnt with him. I feel like I know him almost. He sounds like an amazing person. So then, thanks to the Associated Board Scholarship, you came to Manchester, discovered the curry in good curry in Manchester, no?
Absolutely, great curry in Manchester.
Was it happy times when you came over there?
Oh, I mean, it was amazing, and I think I was sort of awestruck by the sheer volume of people who actually played the viola and who were of such a fantastic level. And I found just connecting in a different way, because although South Africa is a really international place, in some ways it's also a bit cut off and a little bit starved of like cultural influences, and at least it was at the time. And so I think it was really amazing to come to Manchester with just meet lots of people and from all across the world, amazing teachers, be able to travel really easily, which is something that is really not possible for South Africans. Yeah, it was a really wonderful few years. And then I just wound up staying in Manchester for 14 years. I was working at the RNCM. So I loved it.
Did you find the way music is taught over here wildly different to how it was in South Africa, or was it basically the same?
I mean, it varies. I'd say that in some ways, South Africans have it, in some respects, there's a smaller pool of people, but they're very, very obsessed and kind of determined in South Africa, maybe more determined than some people here. It's very difficult to be able to do music in South Africa. I mean, it is also here. I see that too, incredibly difficult, but difficult in a different sort of way. And I'd say the teaching here there is more material to work with, and there's more high level material to work with because of the nature of our culture, although that is experiencing unbelievable difficulty right now. But maybe if I'm just being very general now, I'd say the volume is incredibly different here in comparison to South Africa. But I mean, a lot has changed in terms of music and the music industry in South Africa since the end of apartheid. And it is a far, far more gratefully so diverse industry. So yeah, I think I'm speaking about then.
Yes.
And now it is a little bit different.
Yeah. And it's a little bit different now, quite a lot different, thanks to the work you've been doing as head of strings at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. You've set up this project, ARCO, which is linking, well, perhaps you could tell us about it, linking your students in Birmingham with Soweto. Tell us how you got the idea to do this.
Well, I was in the shower one morning and it was a particularly grey, dreary day in Birmingham. And I'd been kind of thinking for a few years about how there might be a way to bring some of the inspiration from the UK that seems to be so easily attainable. And it seems such a shame not to be able to share it with more people and somehow also exchange ideas. So the idea of ARCO was in 2015 and was to try, there were several motivations. One, to be able to try and create better, more experienced, more inspired, more theoretically informed and inspirational teachers here in the UK. So it's currently a Royal Birmingham Conservatoire students that are teaching students online who are based in Soweto in South Africa. We actually now don't just have strings students, we have strings, woodwind, brass and vocal students who are teaching. So ARCO has become a bit un-ARCO in some ways, but we haven't changed the name. I think one can just imagine it just called ARCO and not think about the bow too much. And at the same time, actually, Soweto is an interesting context because there are already really fantastic teachers who are based in Soweto who give the students face-to-face lessons each week. So we are in some ways a support and a different track, we're a different influence, but we work with those teachers, supporting them. Very, very often the student teacher and the teacher who are based in the center might decide to work on different things. So, and maybe the things that make more sense to do face-to-face, the teacher will do who is based on the ground, and then our student teacher would perhaps do something else. But I think the great thing is that culturally, it's so different, and much of the time our RBC students actually are not English speaking as their first language, and actually none of the South African students have English as their first language. So it is, one has to choose one's words very, very carefully, and we do a lot of teacher training and mentoring for our students in Birmingham, based on specifics to do with this project and difficulties. And there are considerable number of WhatsApp groups that ARCO violin teachers, ARCO viola teachers, ARCO cello teachers, ARCO double bass teachers, ARCO saxophone teachers, and it goes on like that. And yeah, it's just been really a wonderful journey. We've managed to bring several of our students over to the UK to experience festivals and different courses. And we've actually done the same. We've traveled with them around South Africa to different festivals. And we've currently got one of our cellists who is in second year at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire doing brilliantly. And another one of our cellists who is in last year of sixth form at the Purcell School, and he's just got an ABRSM scholarship to go to the Royal Northern College of Music, which is amazing. And another double bass student who we are supporting, he now studies at the University of Stellenbosch. So bit by bit, and another student hopefully is going to study in Bloemfontein from February. So bit by bit, they're all moving. And actually, we have a really similar project in Chennai in India. We're running another project with pretty much the same model, but there are no teachers on the ground in India. And that's with the A.R. Rahman's Sunshine Orchestra based in Chennai. So we deliver one-to-one weekly lessons for the 13 members of the Sunshine Orchestra. And again, it's our RBC students who are doing the teaching. And it's really, really different because these are much, much, much more mature players. They are between the age of 18 and 23, 24. So it's actually, some of them are older than the student teachers who are teaching them. So a different context again.
Yeah, I mean, you say, it's been a lovely journey, but there must have been some enormous obstacles to overcome. I mean, you mentioned there the language alone, but we also know, we've all discovered over the last couple of years that, internet has problems, connection problems, in Soweto. What's the internet connection like? I mean, has that been
it's horrendous. I mean, actually, there is a problem with electricity in South Africa. They have massive power outages. There is a sort of supposed schedule of when power outages happen, but it can be really random. It can be off for hours and hours and hours. And there is no fast, like, fiber internet in Soweto. You can't get it. So actually, we now have two laptops, two different rooms. So we can teach simultaneously now, which is really amazing. But honestly, the number of hundreds of messages that go around are, Mickham is off, Morris Isaacson is offline. That's the school in Soweto. And the student can't see if the student is there. I mean, you just can't imagine. And I mean, they're genuine, really big, actually just general problems for South Africans rather than just, online issues. And I mean, in addition to that, South Africa is, because of the expense of the internet, it is not really normal to have Wi-Fi. And people have to buy data. So a really big problem during some of the time of the pandemic, and I know this is mirrored in hundreds of thousands of places across the world where people were not able to have connectivity and continue their education. We had really similar challenges. Some of our kids simply didn't have the money. They just couldn't get online. And so we try to get someone in South Africa to put data on their phone so they could attend a lesson. And, I'm sure millions of people have done this to try and help people be able to continue. But yeah, it's no joke.
Apart from actual live online lessons, what are the other options though? What are the other tools that you've used to try and keep connected when they couldn't actually join the student live at that moment? Is it uploading videos and comments back? How's it worked?
Yeah, I mean, we've had like Q&A sessions. We've recorded. We've recorded stuff, try to upload. I mean, uploading a video with very, very slow and very little data is unbelievably difficult. So they have what they call social data in South Africa, and that is often available very cheaply late at night. So it's possible to send links, send messages, send information, and they can open them sometimes.
Yes.
If they've got some data. Otherwise, it was to try to connect some of the children who lived close together and get them at somebody's house when it was a safe time to do so, and be able to connect with others. That was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And
Well,
actually, yeah, a few people, we really didn't see them for ages. They just went off the radar, and yeah, a lot of challenges.
yeah. Well, how fantastic that somebody like you is determined enough to keep it going and get the most out of it, and a brilliant teaching experience for your students. I mean, good Lord, if they can teach under those conditions online,
And do
teaching
anything.
in person in someone's front room, just be a gift, right?
Totally.
They must come out feeling well, on top of the world, no?
I think that it is really, I think it is really, really interesting what they've done and what they're doing. Actually, one of my students who teaches on ARCO came into a lesson the other day, and she said, "Louise, you won't believe how amazing it was. It was my first face-to-face lesson I've ever given anyone." And she's been teaching on ARCO for a few years now. She said it was unbelievable how much I could do in the lesson. Yeah. So, but it is better than not having a lesson.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And also supporting the teachers over there. It must be great for them to be able to check in with you as well. I mean, obviously the students too, but having that support network, I mean, it makes me as a teacher feel a lot happier when I can run something by somebody else. So I presume that must be a lovely thing for them.
Yeah, that is great. It is actually for all of us. It's really, really lovely. And I mean, we sort of also realized that teaching lots of sort of, Western art music to, kids in Soweto, kids in India, actually, you need to think out of the box. You really have to understand the culture of the place that you're teaching in, so that you can either try to obtain music that is much more culturally relevant, or get music written. Because actually, although playing the violin or the viola, cello, double bass is a Western art thing, actually you can play any music on, and it can be much more universal than it perhaps seems, as a seemingly Western art music tradition. I think that we have a lot to look forward to in the fact that maybe there are really wonderful changes coming from being a lot more diverse with the instruments that we play, and not necessarily being kind of fixated on specific repertoire, at least not all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask that the next question was going to be, will composers be joining ARCO anytime soon? I'm imagining some potentially wonderful cross collaborations.
Oh, definitely. We've been thinking for ages, and actually we have already done a few commissions, but we've been thinking for ages of a syllabus that is specifically South African, based on South African music, a curriculum that is based around the culture that is relevant to the young people that we're actually teaching. It's quite tricky actually to do that. That's quite a huge project, and we're this year we're taking 6 of our kids to the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, which is in July, and we're hoping that we'll be able to. We're busy sort of choosing a text and then thinking of what music we can commission for a sort of 40-minute concert that they have to give. So I think it's quite exciting times, because South Africa is a very, very energetic and an open place. And there are a lot of people buzzing and a huge amount of talent. Like, our kids are great at rapping and doing all sorts of things. And actually, their talents, I mean, we've got a fantastic singer who plays the cello as well. There's so many gifts there. And it's just sort of looking for ways to use them and help them develop it, but looking at the context in which they live rather than where we come from.
Yeah. And so tell us, in Birmingham, apart from ARCO, which obviously keeps you incredibly busy, but your job as head of strings there must take up a large portion of your week as well. Anything exciting to report coming out of Birmingham at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an amazing time, and last semester, which was the first one really that, you know, we were we were able to really do chamber music continuously and orchestral projects. And yeah, the strings department is doing great, and I feel like there's some really unique and wonderful talents who will make a difference in the music world, who we're really proud of. And we managed to have the Cecil Aronovitz International Viola Competition last semester, which after 2 cancellations, and I pretty much thought we wouldn't be able to do it, we managed it, which was enthralling. And actually the whole strings department were involved, helping, playing, doing all sorts of things. So it felt like a really kind of massive effort from so many people. And we have I'd say a really exciting program of visitors and, you know, wonderful teachers who come in, and players and collaborators, and who do all sorts of crazy things. I feel like music is changing really fast, and we've changed our syllabus to our kind of curriculum to reflect that. Like, all our students have to play blues scales and modes in their technical exams. They have to compose their own cadenzas. They have to do like a multidisciplinary video show of something with acting or electronics or dance. They've got to play like solo Bach in their technical assessments. They have to do a proper like orchestral audition each year. They collaborate with a composer who writes a piece specially for them that they play in their recital. And yeah, there's some really great stuff. It keeps them unnaturally busy, but in some ways that's quite good, because I think having been pushed to do really not a number of things, they very quickly find out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and the things also just to look immediately at, how am I going to be employed? What am I actually going to do? And as we all know, you know, the singular job as a musician is a tough call right now.
Yeah. And I mean, really, I think a singular job as a musician could be seen as quite boring. I think the world has changed so much certainly since I was at college. The possibilities out there are seemingly endless. And although the pandemic has plunged many of us into the depths of despair over the last couple of years, it's also actually made some wonderful connections.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people very excitedly looking forward to what's happening now as the world opens up again. So
totally. I know, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Louise.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thanks a million for asking me, Nicole.